Technology people. Hey, so here's the deal. We are going to talk about how minor works. We've looked at minor intervals a little bit. We only have like 2 days left in this semester. Lots of stuff we didn't get to cover because it's the apocalypse. But this should be pretty interesting. And then tomorrow, for the last day of class, we're going to analyze probably Havana, the pop song. Okay, so here's the deal. Major and minor. We're going to do this in C major to start, and then the little exercises will be in different keys. So I'm going to write out the C major scale. So C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Right. And this is a whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. And we just know that C major's got no sharps, no flats. There it is. That is a C major scale. All of these are major intervals. So C to D is a major second. C to E is a major third. C to F is a perfect fourth because the math works out. C to G is a perfect fifth because the math works out. C to A is a major sixth. C to B is a major seventh. And C to C is a perfect octave. Great. So the way minor works is that there's a first thing called relative minor. And the way you get relative minor is you use the same notes as the major scale, but instead of starting on the first note, you start on the sixth note. So, I'm going to number these, scale degrees wise. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. So relative minor starts the same pattern on 6. So, if I'm in the C major scale, the relative minor would be A minor. So every major key and minor key that are related in this way are called relative minor and relative major. So C is the relative major to A minor because A is the sixth note of the C major scale. But let's just check out how it works. So I'm going to write out the C major scale, only instead of starting on C and ending on C, I'm going to start on A and end on A. So I'm going to go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, just like that. But now, since it's the same whole step, half step, whole step, half step pattern, but I started on a different note, I get a different sequence. A to B is a whole step. Then B to C is a half step. Then we get whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. So this one goes whole step, half step, half step, half step, whole step. Or it just starts here. Whole, half, whole. And here's what that sounds like starting on A. Aha! And so this is the A minor scale. This is the C major, this is the A minor. They are the same notes, but they start in a different spot. So this is called the relative minor. So now I'm going to give these scale degrees 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Because minor works just like major with scale degrees and chords. So let's now say I want to write a song in A minor. Right? Here's my A minor scale. Great. All the same rules apply. Triads, you get chords by taking every other note from the scale, so on and so forth. But minor gets a little bit weird, and here is why. Let's take the one chord in A minor. So the one chord in A minor is going to be 1, 3, and 5. And you can see here there's a half step here as opposed to there. So we're going to get a minor third from A to C. And then we're going to get a perfect fifth from A to E. So Roman numeral 1 is going to be A, C, and E. 1, 3, and 5. Sounds like this. That's awesome. Then we get a 4 chord. Going to be 4, 6, and 1. And so when we look at this, D to F is a minor third, half step or whole step plus half step. So it's going to be D and then F, and then it's a perfect fifth from D to A. Right? And so that's going to be 4, 6, 1, just like it was in major. All the same rules apply, but it sounds totally different. Check it out. Here's my 1 chord A minor. Here's my 4 chord D minor. Oh yeah. Here's where it gets weird. This is why minor is more complicated than major. 5 chord. So, 5, 7, and 2. All the same rules apply. 5 is E. 7 is G. 2 is B. 5, 7, 2. Right? Sounds like this. So here's 1 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord. But here's the problem. When we talked about major scales, you should remember that 7 is the really tense note that wants to go up to 1, and that all the chord progressions are based on 7 wanting to go to 1. 4 also wants to go down to 3. But you can see in minor, we don't really have that. 6 probably wants to go down to 5, because 5 is a stable note, and it does. And so the 4 chord still wants to resolve to the 1 chord, because 6 wants to go down to 5. Here's what that sounds like. So here's 1 chord, wrong, 1 chord, right? Then I go to 4. And that note really wants to resolve down to that note going back to 1. So that's 1, 4, 1, where that's got that same kind of pull. Okay, great. But we don't have a half step between 7 and 1. So 7 doesn't really want to go to 1 in this natural, relative minor thing. So here's what happens. In the 5 chord, and only in the 5 chord, which does happen quite a bit, you take scale degree 7 and you make it sharp. You raise scale degree 7 up, which totally violates all the rules of the scale, but we do it anyway. And so that makes the 5 chord E, scale degree 7 becomes G sharp, and then B is 2. So we got 5, and then we got 7 that has been made sharp. So here's what that sounds like. Here's my 1 chord. Here's my 4 chord. Now if I go to a 5 chord with a G sharp in it, that note really wants to go back to 1. And so you have in the relative minor, you have what's called harmonic minor. And harmonic minor has a raised, which means sharp. That's sharp, I can't spell. Sharp, scale degree 7. So, because there's a whole step between 7 and 1 in the relative minor, and that's in every minor scale everywhere, what happens is, only when you play the 5 chord, but that happens quite a bit, you raise scale degree 7 up a half step to give you that half step from G sharp to A. But what that does is, in the scale, F natural to G sharp is what's called an augmented second. Because that's 2 half steps. It's bigger than that. So it's this weird kind of irrational interval. Right? Because an F to a G sharp is actually 3 half steps. And this is why all that stuff we did at the beginning of the year with knowing the names of the notes and why they're sharp and flat matters. So, here is your assignment today. I'm going to give you a major key, and you're going to tell me what the relative minor is. So, for number 1, which is what we just did, if I give you C major, and I say, what is the relative minor? So, this is the major key. So, then major, and then relative minor. So if I say, if we're in C major, what is the relative minor of C major? You would say A minor. The contrast to that, and the last thing I'll mention for today is, so if the relative minor is the one that starts on the 6th scale degree of major, so C major and A minor are relative, the other thing is called parallel minor. I'll flip this over. So in parallel minor, you can't see that because this is a Sharpie. Parallel minor starts on the same note. So the example of that would be C major is parallel to C minor. So it's not the same notes. You alter the notes in C minor to get, between major and minor. And so parallel minor is when you start on the same note but change the pattern. Relative minor is when you have the same whole step, half step, whole step, half step, but you start in a different spot. So, number 1, so I'm going to put major and minor, and this is relative. So, if I give you C major, the relative minor is A. So for 2, if I give you D major, figure out what the relative minor would be. If I give you F major, what would the relative minor be? If I give you G major, what would the relative minor be? And then finally, if I give you B flat. So, you're telling me what the relative minor is for each one of those, and remember, the way you figure it out is the relative minor starts on scale degree 6 of the major. So you figure out what the major scale is, figure out what the 6th note of that scale would be, and that's your answer. So to do another example, if I had said E flat, so E flat major is E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D, E flat, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. C minor is the relative minor of E flat major, because C is the 6th note of the E flat major scale. And you can hear it. Here's C minor. Here's E flat major. Same notes, starting in a different spot. Do those for your homework, and tomorrow we're going to do an analysis of a pop song, Havana, which is in G minor, actually, and that'll finish up the year. Stay safe out there, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye.